While the Allies celebrated victory, thousands of Nazis slipped away like smoke. Did you ever wonder where those Nazis go? Well, in the chaos of 1945, Allied forces were overwhelmed. Many Nazi officers disguised themselves as refugees. The Vatican, the Red Cross, and even the CIA, unintentionally or otherwise, helped them. The Ratlines, secret escape networks, flourished. You weren't caught? Then you could become anything. A farmer, a professor, or a man of God. Before we get into the story, if you enjoy my videos, please consider subscribing to my channel. It's always very much appreciated, and drop a comment on what story you'd like me to cover next. Now, let's get into it. They called it the end of the war. But for the men who had built the death camps, fired the last bullets, and signed the darkest orders in modern history, it was only the beginning of a different battle, the one for escape. Europe in 1945 was broken. Bombed cities smoldered. Borders were chaos. Millions were displaced. And amid that disorder, thousands of former Nazis, officers, scientists, camp guards, vanished without a trace. Some shaved their heads. Others forged new identities. But the smartest among them, they went looking for God. And sometimes, God answered. The man waiting for them in Rome wore a cassock and a gold cross. He was Austrian, aging, soft-spoken, and he believed in two things: God's mercy and Adolf Hitler. His name was Alois Hudal, a bishop of the Roman Catholic Church. And after the fall of the Third Reich, he became the most powerful guardian angel Nazis could hope for. He wasn't hiding in the shadows. He wasn't exiled or rogue. He lived inside the Vatican City, right in the heart of Catholicism, in a residence known as Santa Maria dell'Anima, just a stone's throw from St. Peter's Basilica. And from that sacred place, he ran the Ratlines. The Ratlines weren't tunnels. They weren't even real roads. They were routes of silence, winding through monasteries, safe houses, convents, and Catholic charity offices, all designed to smuggle Nazi fugitives out of Europe, usually to Argentina, Brazil, or Syria. Some went through Genoa, boarding ships with new names and clean papers. And those papers? Many were signed with Vatican seals or issued with Red Cross credentials arranged by sympathetic clergy. Hudal used his status to vouch for war criminals. He wrote letters, pulled strings, visited them in detention camps to offer last rites, and then handed them fake IDs and instructions to flee. He helped Franz Stangl, commandant of the Treblinka extermination camp, escape justice. He later helped Gustav Wagner, one of the commanders of the Sobibor extermination camp, vanish into Brazil. He helped dozens, perhaps hundreds of SS officers, Gestapo agents, and collaborators walk away from history into sunshine and safety. Why did he do it? Hudal never hid his views. In 1937, he published a book defending National Socialism as a defense against communism. He claimed the Nuremberg trials were a revenge circus orchestrated by the Allies. He believed Nazis weren't criminals. They were victims of politics. Misguided maybe, but redeemable. Men of order. Soldiers of Europe. He believed forgiveness mattered more than punishment. That justice, when cruel, became another form of evil. But maybe it wasn't just forgiveness. Maybe it was loyalty. There's a story told by a young priest who once worked at Santa Maria dell'Anima. He remembered Hudal in his study, smoking, calm, surrounded by papers in German and Italian. One day, a man in a dark coat came in, nervous, whispering. The priest heard only one word: Treblinka. Hudal simply nodded, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small envelope. Inside were new identity papers and a train ticket to Genoa. No one stopped him. The Vatican never publicly condemned him. The church distanced itself, but never stripped his title. He retired quietly, wrote his memoirs, and in 1963, Alois Hudal died in bed, wrapped in robes, holding a crucifix. No trial. And the Ratlines? Others picked up where he left off. New routes, new protectors, because in the wreckage of war, with a world desperate to heal. One of the most notorious Nazis to vanish through the Ratlines was Erich Priebke. and his story is as horrifying as it is almost impossible to believe. In the 1970s, to the locals of Bariloche in Argentina, Erich was just another well-mannered European immigrant. But no one asked where he had come from, because in 1944, Erich Priebke wasn't a schoolteacher. He was a captain in the SS, stationed in Rome. Here's how it happened. In March of 1944, Italian partisans planted a bomb that killed 33 German soldiers. The Nazis rounded up 335 civilians, many of them totally innocent, and dragged them to the Ardeatine caves outside Rome. There, in total silence, the prisoners were forced to kneel. One by one, each man was shot in the back of the head. Priebke did not hesitate. For decades, Italy would carry that silence, the silence of the Ardeatine tomb. When the war ended, Priebke was captured by the Allies. He fled through South Tyrol, then Rome, and finally arrived in Argentina in 1948. And there, he started over. No one in Bariloche suspected that their polite neighbor had committed crimes against humanity. It worked for 50 years. Then, in 1994, a journalist from ABC News tracked him down. The world exploded. Italy demanded extradition. Survivors of the massacre, or their grandchildren, rose up in protest. At his trial, he admitted to carrying out the massacre, but insisted he was only following orders. Sound familiar? He was found guilty of war crimes. He lived to be 100 years old, and when he died in 2013, his corpse was stored for days in a military airport hangar. Because in the end, Erich Priebke had done something worse than kill. He had erased himself, and so we come full circle. The Ratlines weren't just escape routes. They were lifelines for war criminals, stitched together by silence, forged documents, and sometimes the very hands of holy men. They helped monsters vanish, not into hell, but into sunshine, new names, and quiet, comfortable lives. Alois Hudal, the bishop in the Vatican, wasn't hiding in the shadows. He handed out passports like rosaries, convinced he was saving souls, even if those souls belonged to architects of genocide. Erich Priebke, the SS officer who helped execute 335 civilians in a cave outside Rome, lived for decades as a beloved schoolteacher in Argentina. He taught children by day, while their grandparents were still mourning the silence of the Ardeatine tomb. And here's the truth no one likes to admit. They weren't the only ones. There are dozens more stories like this, and many were never caught. If you want to hear more stories of Nazi doctors who lived as priests, war criminals who became professors, and the villages that still whisper their names, comment below, and I'll make part 2. Because history isn't just what we remember. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to check many more on my channel, comment what you'd like to learn about next, and subscribe. I post real stories every single day.